They arrived expecting to see a nation on its knees. Instead, what they saw through the glass destroyed them completely. In the winter of 1943, the first trains rolled across the American heartland, carrying cargo no one expected. The captured veterans of Erwin Rommel's legendary Afrika Korps sat in stunned silence. The unbeatable desert foxes pressed their faces against cold windows. Their eyes refused to believe what lay before them. They had been promised a dying, decadent civilization. They were told it was crippled by Jewish conspiracies and capitalist decay. That lie shattered the moment the Mississippi River appeared on the horizon. Mile after mile of electrified towns blazed with light. There were no blackouts. There were no bomb craters. There were no starving children begging in rubble. Just an endless ocean of prosperity stretching in every direction. Some of these hardened veterans simply broke down and wept. These were men who had crushed Europe under their boots. They understood in that instant that their nation had picked a fight with a colossus. But the psychological demolition had only just begun. The trains pushed deeper into the American interior. The landscape refused to stop giving. In Germany, farmers still pulled plows by hand. Here, machines did the work of 50 men. Single families operated farms larger than entire Prussian estates. Ordinary laborers drove their own automobiles to work. These were men who in Germany would own nothing. They were not officers. They were not aristocrats. They were factory workers and milkmen and plumbers. The prisoners pressed closer to the windows, searching desperately for the slums their propaganda had promised. They found none. Every small town looked like a city. Every city blazed with neon and department stores. The sheer material weight of America began crushing their ideological programming line by line. One German officer turned to his comrade and whispered words that would be recorded by intelligence officers. He was a decorated veteran of 3 campaigns. He said, "We have lost this war." He said, "We lost it the day we declared it." The trains did not stop. From the coast to the heartland, the geography of abundance continued its assault. They passed through industrial zones that stretched beyond the curvature of the earth. There were steel mills and oil, refineries and automotive plants, operating 24 hours a day. They had lights so bright they turned midnight into noon. These men had been told American industry was hollow. They were told it was propped up by international bankers and incapable of real production. Yet here was Detroit alone, producing more armored vehicles in a month than the entire Third Reich could manufacture in a year. The propaganda films they had, watched in German cinemas suddenly, replayed in their minds as absurd as comedy. The master race had been outbuilt by a nation of shopkeepers and jazz musicians. This was not a military defeat. This was ideological annihilation delivered at 60 miles per hour through a train window. Then came the final blow. It was the one that broke even the most fanatical among them. The train stopped at a small station somewhere in the American South. Guards opened the doors and ordered the prisoners onto the platform for processing. What happened next would be documented in military archives for decades. The Americans fed them. They did not feed them with scraps or punishment rations. They served white bread so fresh steam still rose from the crust. They served cold, fresh milk by the gallon. They gave them meat twice a day for breakfast and dinner. There were vegetables and fruit and real coffee with sugar. The prisoners stared at their trays in disbelief. This was better than what they had eaten during active combat in North Africa. It was better than what their families received under rationing back in Hamburg and Berlin. One prisoner began sobbing into his bread. He was a young panzer crewman, no older than 19. An interpreter asked what was wrong. The boy replied that he suddenly understood his own government had been lying about everything. Food does not win wars, but it does destroy the lies that start them. Their journey eventually ended at camps scattered across the American landscape. There were camps like Aliceville in Alabama, and Camp Swift in Texas, and Camp Concordia in Kansas. But these were not prisoner of war camps in the European sense. There were no forced marches. There was no starvation. There were no firing squads. The Americans applied the Geneva Convention with a fastidiousness that bordered on insult. The prisoners received the same rations as American soldiers. They were paid for their labor in camp canteens. They formed orchestras. They published newspapers. They took university courses through extension programs, the very system that was supposed To break their will was instead demonstrating something far more dangerous to Nazi ideology. It proved that democracy could be humane without being weak. It showed that abundance did not corrupt character. It proved that a free people could outproduce and outfeed and outlast a slave empire without sacrificing their souls. The psychological reconstruction had begun. Some prisoners resisted. The hardcore Nazis among them tried to maintain ideological purity. These were the SS fanatics and party loyalists. They threatened collaborators. They held secret meetings. They even established kangaroo courts within the camps. But their power crumbled against an enemy they could not fight. They could not fight guns or guards because the enemy was comfort. The enemy was dignity. The enemy was the realization creeping slowly into every prisoner's mind. They realized their captors were not the subhuman degenerates. They had been trained to exterminate. The Americans were strong. They were disciplined. They were generous. And they possessed a productive capacity so vast that it made all Nazi rhetoric about Aryan superiority sound like the ravings of a lunatic. By the end of 1944 intelligence, reports noted a dramatic decline in ideological commitment among Afrika Korps prisoners. America was winning a war for hearts and minds without firing a single shot in the camps. Food and fair treatment and the visible evidence of a functioning free society were doing what bombing raids could never accomplish. The stories began filtering back to Germany through Red Cross letters. Prisoners described meals their families could no longer imagine. They described towns untouched by war and guards who did not beat them. These letters became a quiet, underground testimony against the regime. While German civilians huddled in bomb shelters, their captured soldiers were gaining weight in America. The abundance had become a psychological weapon. Military historians later calculated the numbers. In 1942, America produced over 47,000 aircraft. Germany managed barely 15,000. The Ford Willow Run plant built one B-24 bomber every 63 minutes. The Afrika Korps veterans realized their nation had challenged an industrial giant it could never defeat. Rommel's elite troops understood logistics better than any politician. They recognized what their professional eyes were seeing from those train windows. They knew Germany had already lost. In the camps, hardened Nazis began asking about American citizenship. SS men secretly discarded their insignia. One older Afrika Korps prisoner confronted new arrivals with a simple question. He asked, if we're the master race, why do we live like beggars while our enemies live like kings? No one could answer. December 1944, a train moved through snowy Pennsylvania. Below in the valleys, towns blazed with Christmas lights. A German sergeant was a veteran of Stalingrad. He watched with tears freezing on his face. He pointed to the lights and spoke in broken English. He said, in Germany, we have nothing now. We have no lights and no hope. He said we were children playing with matches while the adults built cities. They arrived believing they were conquerors. They left knowing they were conquered before the first shot. In a Texas barracks, a young soldier wrote an unsent letter. He wrote, we did not know what a free people could build. Now I know, and I cannot unsee it. That is the shock of abundance. It is the moment when ideology collides with reality and loses completely. American wealth shattered Nazi ideology. It did not do it with bombs or bullets. It did it with bread and milk and the unanswerable light of a free nation blazing through the winter night.